Welcome, everyone, to TBI Talk, a podcast where we'll provide information, education, and inspiration on the subject of traumatic brain injury. I'm Lindy Boone Michaelis, your host, and one of the founders of Ryan's Reach, which is a nonprofit committed to assisting brain injury survivors and their families. I myself am a mother of a TBI survivor, my son Ryan. And Ryan is the namesake of Ryan's Reach, of course. Ryan's injury was from a 3-story fall in 2001, and his recovery has been on the slower path. Slowly but surely, though, he's coming back to us he started coming back to us after 4 slow months in a coma. Now he lives with us, and he still has a profound brain injury. He lives in our home with caregivers 24/7. But really, that makes Ryan one of the lucky ones. Ryan received a settlement, and that has enabled us to care for all of his pressing needs medically and therapeutically. And that also has allowed my husband and me and friends and family to start and operate Ryan's Reach. We began our nonprofit a couple of years after Ryan's accident, after we reached our new normal. And at first, we began just by supporting High Hope's head injury program in Tustin, which was the way we thought we could raise funds and make those funds really count, because this is an excellent day program and another nonprofit in our area. And we've been able to turn those funds into scholarships so that TBI survivors can attend and receive therapy there. But as of 2016, Ryan's Reach branched out, and we opened our first group home residence. And we call that Ryan's Reach R&R. And the R&R stands for Residence and Respite. And those of you that don't know what respite is, because a lot of people don't, they ask me, what's respite care? That's when the family members or caregivers of a loved one need a break. And I kind of call it coming up for air. We realize that when we're caregiving, we don't think much of our own care, and our own health can suffer. And so we thought, besides having a residence for TBI survivors, we wanted to also offer that respite, that coming up for air, to family members that really need it. So we opened our first Ryan's Reach R&R in 2016. And then in 2019, we opened up our Santa Ana residence. And so currently we're providing housing and care for 8 full-time residents between the 2 homes. So that recaps the last 20 years. I mean, this has been going on a long time, 20 years of Ryan's Reach in a nutshell. And I'm sure many of you listening haven't heard of us. So I wanted to just kind of tell you who we are, what we do. We're in Orange County in Southern California, and our reach has been pretty much limited to this area. So that explains why we decided, finally, let's do a podcast. We want TBI Talk to be another way that we are reaching out to help other people in the TBI world. And I've met a lot of people over these years that I'm privileged to get to know. And then I can also invite to come on and tell us their stories and give us their information. For a family member that has a loved one with a TBI, there's so much information out there, and you want to get it, and you want to know what is happening and what's likely to happen next, and how you can be the most helpful in the recovery process. And it all feels very urgent and scary. I know that there could be people tuning into this podcast right at the beginning of this journey, or maybe a listener has been part of the TBI community for quite a while. But it can feel lonely at any stage. At first, you may have a lot of support from friends and family, but people eventually have to get on with their own lives. And your life may have shrunk to just fewer and fewer people who can come alongside you. So you may be needing the support of just knowing you're not the only person this has happened to. This podcast is here both for those who have had a TBI and for those who love them and are caring for them. So on TBI Talk, we'll sometimes have therapists or experts who work with survivors of TBI, and other times we'll have family members to talk about what it's been like for them. And other times we'll have someone who has incurred a brain injury and will talk from firsthand experience. All of these programs are in the hope that you will feel informed, educated, encouraged, and inspired. And hopefully you will feel less alone. Now, my guest today has these very same goals, and I want to give her a proper introduction. Her name is Cristabelle Braden, and Christabelle is an award-winning singer, songwriter, speaker, writer, podcast host, and an advocate for brain injury. She has fought through multiple traumatic brain injuries, to come out on the other side, carrying a strong message of resilience and hope and healing. In the early stages of her recovery, songs began to pour out of her, and her incredible journey has taken her from hospital rooms and rehabilitation to the platforms across the nation that she travels to now. Whether she's speaking or singing, she brings her powerful story and message for freedom, healing, and love wherever she goes. So, Cristabelle, welcome to TBI Talk.
Thank you so much for having me. It is an honor to get to be here with you on your new podcast.
Yes. Thank you for coming. I hope you're doing well. Are you having a good week?
As good as I can this week.
Yeah. I know you're a busy girl. You have so much going on. I am so glad that I got to be introduced to you. You didn't know I was watching, but you came to my church, and not really come to my church, through a Zoom call like this. And Pastor Bobby Schuler interviewed you. And I was just so wrapped up in what you were talking about, that you'd had an injury, that you started writing songs and singing and sharing your music and really supporting others with TBI. I mean, after your injury, you had to go through your own recovery, but then you started to think about others, which to me really touched me. You remember, I'm sure, that interview with Bobby.
Yeah.
And that's how I first saw you.
That's really nice. Thank you.
Yeah. I want to have full disclosure here right now and say that I forgot to press my timer. I don't know how long I'm into this first segment. So I'm going to be relying on producers to let me know when I need to wrap up this segment. But I do want to just ask you, for as long as we have for the rest of this segment, can you tell us just what your website covers, CristabelleBraden.com? You are doing many things and wearing many hats.
Yeah. So I have my website, CristabelleBraden.com, that shares about my music and ministry, and just, the message that the Lord has put on my heart to share. And then I also have hopeafterheadinjury.com, which is a brain injury outreach. And I host Zoom meetings a couple of times a month. We have a Hope After Head Injury Zoom support group. And then we also have a brain injury Bible study Zoom group for to talk about faith and brain injury. And we have survivors and caregivers. And it's been a beautiful way to connect with others. We also run Facebook support groups and things like so. The last number of years, I've been doing a lot of online outreach, which has been really, really great.
Wow. I know. I've been on your website and I just look at all the things I want to click on and read it all. The singing, the recording, the speaking. What kind of speaking do you do? You get invited to speak to what groups?
Yeah, so I've given keynote presentations at brain injury conferences, medical conferences. I've spoken at a lot of the statewide brain injury organization conferences, as well as the Mayo Clinic's brain injury conference. I've also spoken just at brain injury support groups. I also speak at women's conferences and events. So really, I love to share messages of hope. I remember what it's like to feel hopeless. And I just like to encourage other people to know that no matter what you're going through, that there is hope, even when it feels dark.
I think you must be a real inspiration and hope to a lot of people that felt like maybe their life was over after a brain injury, that everything they were aspiring to maybe wasn't going to be possible. But I know that you have accomplished a lot. Maybe it's gone a different path than you were initially thinking your life was going to go on. But it sounds to me like you're having an impact, a great impact on so many people. Isn't it international, the ministry
Yeah.
and the work that you do? Do you
Yeah.
have any idea how many people belong to your support group?
Oh goodness. I'm not really sure actually. We've had a lot of people in and out. We have thousands of people in our Facebook group, and it's really grown organically over time. It wasn't anything I ever really set out to create. It just kind of started to grow. So
Mm-hmm.
it's just been really beautiful to see how God has grown and connecting with other brain injury survivors and caregivers. So
Mm-hmm.
it's good to know we're not alone.
Yes, yes. Well, I'm going to want to get into just a little bit more specifics after this break that we're going to take. I want to be able to talk about your music. I want to be able to know a little bit more about how people can get involved in your support group, maybe your online Bible study and things like that. So I just want to ask everybody to please come on back after this break, and we will talk about a lot more about Cristabelle Braden and the hope that we have after TBI. Don't leave us. And thanks for sticking with us. Once again, I'm here with Cristabelle Braden, singer, songwriter, and TBI survivor. And I have so many things I want to talk about with you. First, let me ask you, you wear so many hats with all of the things that you work on for the TBI community. When it comes to your work life and your mission, what is the way you first identify yourself? For those that haven't heard of Cristabelle Braden.
That's an interesting question. I don't think anyone's asked me that before. I think for me, the way I identify myself is I just I'm a daughter of God. Like
Yeah,
I just want to be, who God's called me to be and
that's the
take
first thing
advantage
that comes
of
to your mind. I love it.
life. Yeah, that's the first
Hmm.
thing.
Yeah,
Because a lot of times we put our identity in what we do, and after a brain injury, that all gets taken away. And
yeah.
so, you could work a certain job or have certain skills or certain things, and one hit to the head, and that's all gone. And so
Hmm.
over time, I had to learn, like, if I am identifying myself by what I do, then that's all that can all disappear. And it did.
Right.
I identified myself before my injury as a straight A student.
Hmm.
Um, I loved to act. I was really good at memorizing. I liked to do theater, and I had a lot of aspirations academically. I was in line for valedictorian.
Wow.
After my brain
Wow.
injury, short-term memory, struggle in
Hmm.
school, no grade, like my grades, I couldn't do any of the sports I used to do. I used to do dance class. I couldn't do any of that. And
Mm.
everything was just gone. And so, I don't know.
Well,
Thinking
that's one of
about
the
it
gifts really that is from
now,
brain injury.
um,
I'm sorry to cut you off, but it just reminded me that at Shepherd's Grove, where we go to church, one of the things that drew me there was something that we say as a church group right before Pastor Bobby will preach. He has us stand up, open our hands, and recite the creed of the beloved. And just part of it is, I'm not what I have. I'm not what I do. I'm not what people say about me. I am the beloved of God. It's who I am, and no one can take it from me. And I was drawn, I think, to that church because right away from that creed, I think of Ryan. And I think of all the people that have had traumatic brain injury and their lives were, he was going to write movies and be in, the entertainment business as a writer. And he wanted to make very positive movies or television. And of course, that hasn't happened, but that hasn't changed the essence of who he is and the value that he has, right?
Yeah.
Can you
Yeah.
describe?
And
Go ahead.
sorry, I was just going to go back to the question you asked. When I think
Yes.
about how I identify myself, it's, um, you know, I just feel grateful to be here. But as far as like, I think what you were trying to ask is out of all the hats that I wear,
Mm-hmm.
where I identify the most. And I think the music, everything outpours from music has been very healing in the journey. And I love sharing brain injury encouragement and doing all those things. But I think right now, if I would say it's, I think of myself as an encourager, whether through
Mm-hmm.
songs or through
Yeah.
speaking or wherever.
Well, I would have to agree with you because I've been on your website and I've been exploring what you do, and every aspect you are an uplift and offering hope and definitely not succumbing to the negative way you could look at what happened to you, but through your perception of who you are and your essence, I think you are an encourager. I do want to spend a little time in this segment to just tell us how you got a brain injury and to what extent that, you had to relearn things to get to where
Mhm.
you are now.
Yeah, so I had my first traumatic brain injury about 15 years ago. Um, it was actually from an accident in a youth group. We were playing a game, and the boys were running behind me, and they were pulling a prank, thinking it was funny. And my head ended up slamming headfirst into the concrete wall
Mm,
and bounced off the floor, and I lost consciousness. I seemed okay that night. But I had swelling in my brain. So I got progressively worse as the days went
mm,
on. I didn't get treatment right away. They didn't even call my parents and tell them anything happened. And I ended up having to relearn how to get dressed, how to take a shower. I lost a lot of my childhood memories. My short-term memory was gone. I had right-sided muscle atrophy. Um, I like my speech would be slurred. I struggled with every aspect, like how to just do these, simple things that seem like no big deal. Like, crossing a street, I would forget to look for cars.
mm.
I would just always be confused. And I didn't at first have awareness of the brain injury. Like I didn't realize anything was really wrong. I knew I wasn't in school and stuff, but I don't even remember the first year. But it took
Really?
time for me to, yeah, and it took time for me to get out of denial and realize that I had a TBI, and then
Mm-hmm.
um, try and uh, grapple with that. And over the years, I started to improve. I did a lot of therapies, but I had undiagnosed vestibular system dysfunction. So I kept falling and hitting my head over and over again and getting
Yeah.
more brain injuries of varying degrees of severity. So I've had over 12
Wow.
concussions since the first TBI, and it's kind of compounded into a lot of different chronic conditions and things. But I also think that if I never had all those injuries, I would never have started my support group or podcast or any of this. And, you know, um, it's been a long journey. I still struggle with things, but
Mm-hmm.
every day I'm just grateful to be here and to be able to encourage others that there's hope in the
That's
dark,
right.
and that, in those times when it feels like nothing makes sense, um, there's hope. On the one hand, neuroplasticity, the brain has ability to
Right.
heal. There's new research coming out about brain injury, new treatments coming out that I've been able to do some of them in the last 4 years. That's really changed the trajectory of my recovery. Things that didn't
Wow. So
exist when I
even in the
first got
last few
injured.
years, because how
Oh,
long ago
yeah.
did you get injured?
My first TBI was 15 years ago.
Okay. So even in the last few
Yeah.
years, progress.
Oh yes, major progress in the last few years. Yeah, my vision, my eyes are starting to work together now. Just 2 years ago, they weren't. I like my balance has gotten better. I've been able to do other therapies that have helped. And so, part of my podcast and what I try to share, it's called Hope Survives, is the reminder that there is hope because of the new treatments
Right.
and the neuroplasticity, but there's also hope because God is good even when we can't see, So
Yeah.
there's hope in multiple ways, and I
Yeah.
just like to encourage
Yeah.
and point people to that hope.
Yeah. I like to go in and say prayers with my son every night before he goes to sleep. And there was this one momentous night where, as I was praying, I was thanking God for his life. And Ryan finally was speaking and able to interact with me. And he goes, "You're thanking God for me?" And I said, "Of course I am. I'm so glad for your life." And he goes, "It's not a wasted life." And that just was such a beautiful comment from him, that he recognizes it's not a wasted life. It's just different. And God can use anybody in any state. And we just never know necessarily what the plan is, but it's going to be usable and positive. And I'm going to take a break right here. I'm going to come back shortly and just continue with this conversation. There's more to come. And so we're back with Cristabelle Braden, and I have so many questions that I know I have limited time, so I'm trying to make sure I ask her as much as I can. I want to direct you, though, to her website, CristabelleBraden.com. And I think if you have a brain injury or have a loved one with a brain injury, you'll be very glad that you've visited her website and find out all that she's got there to support people with brain injury. And I'm sure family members would love this as well. Christabelle, I'm just very curious as to what came first after your own brain injury and you started to get your footing, and all these things have blossomed on your website. What came first, and how did that gradually lead to so many other things you're doing?
It was definitely writing music. I never aspired to be a songwriter. I have a producer in Nashville that I work with now, and he told me that I did my music career backwards based on most everyone that he knows. That I started writing songs without any, goal of being an artist or anything like that. And
Mm-hmm.
I struggled with aphasia, which is word finding difficulties, and I would get really overwhelmed and overstimulated. I had a lot of light and noise sensitivity, and I would get really overwhelmed with multiple people talking. I never felt like I could express myself because I struggled with my speech and with my words.
Mm-hmm.
But I was able to write songs. So I started writing lyrics and music songs because in songs I could share emotions that I didn't always have the words for. And so
Mm-hmm.
it really just started as a way to cope with the injury. And then moving forward, a year or two after the injury, I started playing my songs locally, and there was a local singer-songwriter that saw me sing, and he invited me to open for him at all of his concerts.
Wow.
And he was about my parents' age. And so I went from, just writing songs in my room. I was still going to the hospital for rehab therapy. I started playing, concerts every weekend. And from there, somebody asked me like, "Oh, like, can I buy your CD?" And I was like, "Why would I make a CD?" I just wasn't even thinking about that.
Mm-hmm.
And anyway, long story short, the Lord just started to open more and more doors, and I just started to walk through them. And I felt like, I was struggling all day. I would go with a headache, but as soon as I would start to sing, all that just felt like it melted away. And
Amazing.
singing and writing songs about the real, raw, vulnerable, deep things. My songs are
Right.
very personal, but I also hope that others can relate. And people started to tell me I can relate to your songs. And so
Yes.
from
Yes.
there, doors just started to open, and In 2015, I posted a video called You Look Fine, The Struggle of an Invisible Injury. And it went
Mm,
kind of like mini viral. And I had
hmm.
less than 100 people on my page at that point. I didn't really think anyone was going to see it. And from there, I started getting invitations to speak at conferences. And then from
Yes,
there, like around that same time, I started the Facebook online support group. And from there, things just started to grow organically. And I started to see that, hey, other people have brain injuries, and me being able to just talk about what it's like to live with one, if that can help somebody else who doesn't have the
yeah,
words, because I know what it's like to not have the words. Now that I got my words back, I feel like it's an
mm,
opportunity to serve the Lord and to help others to know that, hey,
that's right,
let's talk about what it's like to live with an injury.
right,
So it really just started from there. And then I got
right.
involved in advocacy through the Brain Injury Association. I'm now, just this year, was added to the board of directors for the Brain Injury Association of Pennsylvania. And I've done
That's
Capitol Hill
amazing.
advocacy with the Brain Injury Association of America. I met with legislation and advocated for survivors. I want to help bring a voice to the invisible injury. And yeah,
It's
so that's kind of
true.
how it all came together.
There's a lot of help out there for people who've had brain injury before they're 18. And what we noticed is if your injury was after 18, there's not as much to help you know how to live or get rehab. It's kind of like you say, people fall through the cracks. And so that's one reason we started our group homes for brain injury with Ryan's Reach is a lot of people that I knew, their loved one could be in their 30s or younger and be placed in a group home for the elderly because there wasn't any place for a brain injured person to be in a group home situation. So that's why we had to start that. But there is this heart of empathy that opens up when you've experienced something so traumatic, but you get support and you want others to feel that support. Isn't that true?
Yeah, well, we didn't have support
You
when I first had
didn't.
my
Yeah.
injury. No, not at all.
Mm.
My parents went through their savings. We had
Yeah.
no, because we lived 10 minutes from the hospital that I was originally in, and they wanted me to be an inpatient. And my mom thought, well, maybe she should be home at night with her siblings. And she would drive me every day. But what
Hmm.
we didn't know is that if you're not inpatient, you don't get the caseworker. And we completely fell through all the cracks of everything.
Hmm.
We did not have, there was not awareness of brain injury. We were very alone.
Hmm.
We had no idea what to do. I looked fine, so people would
Right.
assume that,
Right.
my mom was just babying me or whatever. Or
Hmm.
that, like, I was faking it, or, I would get all sorts of things from kids at school bullying me.
Yeah.
Um,
Wow.
so we had nothing. And that's why I have been so passionate about bringing awareness, is because there are still people, there's so many more resources now, but there's
Right.
still so many people who have nothing when they get
Hmm.
injured because they don't know about it. And so
Yeah.
the more awareness we can bring, I love what you're doing with the group homes. That's
Hmm.
incredible and so needed.
Hmm.
And I
Thank
mean,
you.
I'm so grateful for what you're doing. I think it's wonderful.
Well, I know that because my dad is a celebrity, my dad is Pat Boone, and because he's a celebrity, we were able to go on Larry King Live. That brought attention to Ryan's story, and it didn't necessarily offer us the financial kind of support or anything. We weren't being sent money. We were being sent a lot of prayers, a lot of emotional support. And that in and of itself felt like the platform was being laid in our laps to be able to do something to give back to this community that we didn't choose to be a part of, but we found ourselves a part of. And the fact that so many people don't have the opportunity to be known or seen, it was a gift to us to be able to say, okay, we have people looking at us. How do we want to represent? And we wanted to represent a family that did pray and a family that did turn to God in these ridiculously painful, shocking moments. But also, tangibly, I wanted to see what we could do to help. So I feel like that's kind of similar in your heart. It's like, I want people to not feel alone. I keep hearing that and reading in on your bios and things, that you just don't want people to feel alone.
Yeah. I mean, because I felt so alone.
Mm-hmm.
And I wish I could do more. I want to do more. I have dreams of starting my own nonprofit. But there's only so much I can do with as a survivor.
And that's another good question. I wanted to say, how do you manage your energy? I know we've even talked about it, but you have to be careful about how much energy you expend, because you still have to monitor and be aware that you want to do more, but you better be careful so you don't crash, right?
Yeah. Yeah, I feel like it's like up and down. Like I feel like I have times where I'm able to handle more, and then I have times where I can't do anything. I'll have days where I still get like really overwhelmed or bad headaches. I really struggle with barometric pressure changes when the weather changes. Of course, you in Orange County, you don't really have that much. But over where I live, we have a lot of weather shifts, and when the air pressure suddenly changes, my head feels like it's being squeezed. I get a lot of headaches, and I've made a lot of lifestyle changes. I'm gluten-free now because I had migraines nonstop. I tried so many medications, and finally I went gluten-free, and it completely changed my life.
So that really made a difference.
Yeah, I got off of the migraine medications that I'd been on. They weren't really working anyway. But to answer your question, you have to pace, you have to plan, you have to allow recovery and rest time, and I not push myself, and realize that it's also rest is productive, especially when you have a brain injury. And so just one day at a time, one step at a time. And I don't do everything at once. Like I'm on a break from my podcast right now because I'm releasing music. I'm not in a season where I can handle both. So it's like you kind of have to you look at my website and think I'm doing a billion things. But it's really I take breaks from different things to do one thing at a time.
That's really wise. I'm going to take one more break here, speaking of breaks, and I want to come back and talk about your latest release of your music before we're done here, okay? So don't go away. Please come back. Thank you, everyone, for sticking with us for more with Cristabelle Braden. I am just loving everything that we are talking about, because I know how important it is to talk about it, the good, the bad, the ugly, and the hope. And that's what I know is the most important to both of us, is to end with hope. And I want Christabelle to talk about her new release of music, because if you get it, I know you will hear the message of hope in it. And so will you tell us what your new release is?
Yes. So it's called Restoration. And to put it simply, it's an album of songs about God's faithfulness in the middle of my mess, in the middle of my brokenness, how God put me back together in ways that I can't really describe. But it's more of an intimate worship album. It has both intimate worship as well as like anthems of faith and hope and trust. And there's a song called Hope in the Storm that I actually wrote based on my brain injury Bible study group. 2 years ago, we were doing weekly meetings, and I wrote this song based on the brain injury Bible study group, and just like that Jesus is our hope in the middle of what feels like a storm inside of our own head. How so there's songs of hope, there's songs of brokenness, there's songs of faith. There's a song called The Healer, which is all about my doubt and unbelief that I could be healed. There's a line in it that says, I don't seem to doubt it for other people. I trust in your strength and pray in faith. But when it comes to me, why don't I believe that you can do what you say? And the song is about taking my eyes off of my struggles and putting them onto the healer, onto the Lord. And so it's really personal. But I also pray that it'll help others to know that there is hope, and it's different than my previous albums. I think it's I've spent more time on it. It's longer, but it feels like me. It feels like
Mhm.
my obedience to the Lord and my faith and it feels like it's my testimony.
Right.
So
How do people get your music now? Do they go to a store? Do they download on iTunes? I really am not sure how it's all changed.
so you can stream it on Spotify or Apple
Okay.
Music. I also have
Mhm.
lyric videos on YouTube. I do have physical
Mhm.
CDs if anyone
Mhm.
wants one, but um
Okay.
yeah.
Well, good. Well, listen, one of my favorite songs that I've been listening to off of your website, I wanted to end with, it's a music video as well as just this most beautiful song. If you're listening audio only, please listen to every word. And then it's also a beautiful visual video. So we're going to leave it with that song. But I just want to thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a guest on TBI Talk with me today. And this is Cristabelle Braden singing Different Kind of Warrior. Thank you.
I always thought a warrior was someone standing tall, someone fearless, someone brave, someone who'd never fall. But I hurt, I feel weak, I have pain, I can't speak. Yeah, I struggle and I bleed, I have fears I can't beat. But maybe I always had it wrong. What if the strongest fighters are the ones who don't feel strong? I'm a different kind of warrior. You might not see me fight, but I know that I'm victorious every day that I'm alive. Even if nobody sees it, I will choose to keep believing. My story is not over. I'm a different kind of warrior. Putting on my armor as I lay my burdens down, letting go, give God control and see Him all around. Yes, I hurt, I feel weak, I have pain, I can't speak. Yeah, I struggle and I bleed, I have fears I can't beat. But maybe I always had it wrong. What if my strongest weapon is a true and honest song? I'm a different kind of warrior. You might not see me fight, but I know that I'm victorious every day that I'm alive. Even if nobody sees it, I will choose to keep believing. My story is not over. I'm a different kind of warrior. My fight might be invisible, but don't think it's not real. I've got faith for a miracle, trust in God to heal. Marching into battle, confident of this, He'll finish what He started in me. Yes, I believe I'm a different kind of warrior. You might not see me fight, but I know that I'm victorious every day that I survive. Even if nobody sees it, I will choose to keep believing. My story is not over. I'm a different kind of warrior. Oh, I'm a different